Welcome to the Barleymen. We have an exciting episode 2 for you today. Jason, what are we doing today?
Well, it's right here in front of you, Mike. We're talking about the difference, the update, and New Belgium Brewery's Fat Tire Ale, their flagship Belgian Amber Ale. In January 2023, they decided to make quite a radical change, not only to the graphic design, which I will talk about in a little bit, but also to the recipe. There was several big differences that they made to this. Now, as far as the reasoning, that's something we'll discuss as well, why they would do this after having the same recipe for 20 plus years. But before we get into this, I think it's very important to talk about the history of New Belgium Brewing, where they are, what they stand for. So Mike...
So Kim Jordan, Jeff Levitch. So he goes on a bicycle trip in Belgium, which is where the Fat Tire name comes from. And he falls in love with Belgian style brewing, and he's a home brewer. And they decided to really go for it and start brewing. He had been a good home brewer beforehand. He was very, very good. And his friends had told him that he should sell his beers, but he hadn't done that yet. They took out a second mortgage, and they actually started in their basement, which I can appreciate, us coming from my garage, right? They started very humbly. When they got the first equipment, they actually had to tear out a door even just to fit it in. Something we should mention is what really is brought to the table here is this is the first time that Belgium-style beers and ales are being brought to the American public. It's something completely new in the craft market.
Yeah, this was a huge shift, a huge expansion of the American craft beer world, because up until then we were dealing with mostly, well, there was definitely German influence as well as English influence, but really there were no Belgian ales. And shortly after they made Fat Tire, I think a year or two later, they won an award, but there was no category for Belgian ales at the time, so it was classified as a specialty ale.
Yeah, the first couple of years they went to the American Beer Festival. They couldn't even, you know how you submit your beers and you get tasting notes back, and the notes they got back said, we can't even taste this because there's no category for it. And so eventually they won. They worked out of the garage in the beginning a lot, and so Kim kept her job, but she was, besides having a family, besides being married, besides brewing beer, she's there bottling, she's there putting labels on, she's out there being the salesperson. So she's labeling things and she's selling it, and she's taking it to the local beer pub, she's picking her kid up from school, this kid's getting familiar with all the liquor stores inside of Fort Collins. It's a pretty incredible deal. They moved to their new factory when?
I believe was that 1991?
Yeah. And so they moved down the street and they started their own thing. And it's also important, besides bringing Belgium ale to Americans, it's also important to know that these guys, from the very beginning, when they went on a hike and they came up with their foundational concepts, that one of their foundational concepts was to be eco-friendly.
Yes, very important to them.
Which is something that they have been a leader in from the very beginning.
Right. In fact, Fat Tire Ale was the first nationally available beer to become certified as carbon neutral. This happened in 2020. You can see it on the packaging for both the old and the new style. And that's something that they're really proud of.
Yeah, and not just that, they put in one of the largest solar arrays. It did about 7% of their factories, 7% of the energy used in the factory. It did 16% at peak performance. So they've been a leader in trying to not just brew something that we think is good for the soul, but also to do it in a way that is environmentally responsible.
I agree with that, and I would definitely say that Kim Jordan is among an elite. I mean, she's in the ranks of, I would say, of Jim Cook and Sam Calagione from Dogfish Head. Mm-hmm. So, are we ready to move on to the graphic design?
Yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about the graphic design, since it's your field of expertise.
Yes, as a graphic designer, I would be remiss if I didn't highlight and go over the dramatic changes that New Belgium has gone through in the graphic design here for Fat Tire. So where do we begin? I mean, first off, the thing that catches my eye is this blue. Okay, we've gone from kind of I would almost say a muddy dark blue to a bright electric blue that's much more, I don't know, attention grabbing for me. So that's the first thing that I see. Second thing is the
Well, and also remember, like, colors are important, right?
Oh, yes.
I feel differently looking at those two different packages.
Surely. Mm-hmm.
I will say it's hard because, having grown up with the first package, there's a nostalgia factor to it.
Oh, for sure.
But I am more drawn to the newer design.
Yeah, no, this is definitely the old style. This is a classic, nostalgic design. It's been here in Colorado for a very long time. Everyone knows this look and feel. So it's a dramatic, and they've used this, I believe, since the beginning. I'm sure it's gone through a few tweaks, but they've had pretty much this look and feel for the last 1 to 2 decades. So moving on, the next thing besides the color is the choice of fonts. You see, I'll stand up, get in front here, we can point out a few things. We've gone from a chunky serif font to a, equally, in fact, even more chunky sans serif font. But this is an interesting font to me. It's kind of fun. It's nostalgic in a way. It reminds me of like 1960s racing posters. Also kind of a Tintin feel, something about that. And they've also gone with a really fancy script font here that is also reminiscent of beer labels from, I would say, as far back as the 40s and 50s. Like some of the big names, they would use, even like Hams and stuff like that, they would use these really fancy scripts. But all in all, I think it's a tighter design. It's more iconic and it's easier to get the information. And we'll see, we haven't broken out yet the individual bottles, but there's several differences as well, where I think the new design really shines.
Well, and also, really, I love this. So when you're looking at the sun and you see these rays coming out, but they've represented them in those squiggly kind of gold
stylized
type of rays.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say that it reminds you of the old Tintin comics, right?
Yes.
That's the thing that does it for me, is where we're showing not just the color palette, but we're indicating the motion of something that's normally unseen in that very wavy, stylized design.
Yes.
Right, so let's look at the bottles.
Yes, let's look at the bottles. So okay, here we have the original one, which mirrors a lot of the outside packaging. Now, one problem right away. This is a subtle thing that a graphic designer notes, and it's contrast. Gold text on dark red. I can't even read it. The contrast is really poor. Anyway, so yeah, this is the old design. You can see the bottle cap is graphic and iconic, 2 colors.
Absolutely.
Pretty neat and clean. And this does kind of have a Tintin cartoony feel to it.
It does, but that's just because of the I think that's the angle and how they've blown up the bicycle.
Right. Well, look at the top. If we can start with the bottle cap of the new one.
Oh.
I think this is even more like comic-y Tintin style, in my personal opinion, and I like that. I think it gives it a really neat feel. If you compare it to the old, we've got a lot of white. And at first I was like, that's an interesting choice, why they would want to go with so much white. But keep in mind that New Belgium Brewing is very environmentally friendly. This uses a lot less ink, a lot less toner. So this is more sustainable. That's just like an environmental point of view. But if you want to talk about graphic design, this is just way more iconic, consolidated, and it's easy to read. You've got all your information presented in this nice oval. It's got this, this beautiful new icon like Mike was talking about. They still use a bike. The bike is a little bit different than the original design, but it's very similar. So they've still got the core element,
which they also
Jeff's bike.
Yeah, Jeff's bike, and which they also it was in, I want to say 1988 or 1989 that they actually started rolling out the actual bicycles. I was in a bar, believe it or not, this happened. When that first happened, I was there when Fat Tire showed up to give away a Fat Tire bike.
Oh, wow.
But every employee on their 1-year anniversary receives one of these bikes.
Oh.
It's just a fun fact.
Yeah. Another thing that's neat about both of these bottles, the actual glass bottles are the exact same, and they've got a little bit of a collar here, and it sticks out a little bit. And this is nice because it has a Belgian feel. This bottle design was actually inspired from Jeff's trip, I believe, to Belgium. The shape of it actually, and it is unique.
And the brewer there now, because Jeff left, he had some other interests he wanted to go do. Later there was a divorce. We'll not get into that. But when he left, they brought in a master brewer from Belgium.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Actually, the story goes that he had been brought in to speak about some of the brewing techniques of Europe to some of the conventions. Kim ran it by him that they were looking for a master brewer, and then a few weeks later she gets a call, and it's him, and he's like, I'm in Rhode Island. I was thinking I'd just drive down to Fort Collins. And she's like, it's a big country, right?
Right.
Like, okay, drive down. Anyway, it all worked out.
Yeah.
The rest is history, as they say.
Indeed. One last thing I'd like to say that really strikes me, because this, the original, is very iconic classic design. But this new design, in a way, is just as classic as the old one. So that's quite a feat for them to pull off from a graphic design standpoint. And I really think, as far as, from a designer point of view, the new design is definitely a winner for me.
So why don't you, Jason, why don't you start taking us through some of the ingredient differences?
Okay.
And I will start pouring some of these so that we can do the tasting and see if we can taste what's different in the recipe. Because the recipe was changed.
Yes, it was, actually. If you go to New Belgium's website, which is a nice clean website, they give you all the stats for their beers as far as the different parameters. And so we're going to go through those. But what were the old ingredients? What were the parameters, say, 2 years ago for the Fat Tire? Well, in order to do that, Mike, we've got to go back in time. Yeah. There is a way you can do that. It's called the Wayback Machine. Google that. Search up any URL, and you will be able to hopefully go back in time and see several instances throughout the years. So what I did is I just went to whatever their URL is, which is like New Belgium Brewing, and I went back to 2021 to get the ingredients for this guy here, and there they were. And so now I have them side by side, and when you look at them side by side, there are several big differences. So first we'll start out with our ABV, which is alcohol by volume.
Yep, alcohol by volume.
Okay, exact same. We've got 5.2 for the old, 5.2 for the new. Which, what is an IBU?
IBU is an international bittering unit. So when you are looking at IBU numbers, you are finding out how bitter is this beer going to taste.
Would I be correct in saying that a higher IBU means that they use more hops?
More hops for sure.
Okay, well, I agree with that one, because yes, indeed. All right, so the next one, calories.
You didn't tell us the numbers for IBU.
I didn't? Oh, dang it. Okay, so the original one, this guy, was 22, which is, that's not really that much, but
it's actually low in the world of beers. Well, especially when you look at things like IPAs.
What do you think they would do with the new one? Do you think it would go up or down?
Well, I mean, you know my theory on this. There will be an episode on this later, but I think that the day of the IPA is fading, so my guess is that they went down.
They did go down. They went down to 15, so we went from 22 to 15. Calories also went down. Okay, so moving on to the next parameter is yeast. Yeah, yeast is the same. I think they have their own,
proprietary mix.
Yes, I'm pretty sure, because both of them it's listed as house ale yeast, and I think it's the exact same proprietary yeast they've been using for 20 plus years.
Absolutely.
Okay, hops. This is where things get interesting. The old guy used some of the classics, Willamette and Nugget, which are both from the Pacific Northwest, and then Golding.
That's UK, right?
That is, yeah, that's from the southeast, from like Kent, I believe, Kent and Sussex.
Ah, yes.
Now, the new one, they decided to go throw those hops out, and they're using all new varieties that, in fact, if you look in this book here on hops, you won't find any of them. We've got Triumph, which was invented or created at Oregon State University down in Corvallis, Oregon. And then we've got HBC 522, never heard of it before. It's some hybrid they made up in Yakima. It's two of the older ones, I don't remember which, but basically it's a hybrid between those two. And the last one's a really oddball. I've never heard of this one before. It's called Barbe Rouge. It's a French variety. Apparently, two areas that are kind of coming on the scene when it comes to hops, because of course you've got your classic areas. You've got the noble hop regions of Germany and Czech. You've got your English hops, which are your Goldings, your Fuggles, and then you've got the capital of the world, which is Yakima, the Pacific Northwest, which produces, I'd say, like 99% of the hops worldwide.
But before we move on, can I address?
Yeah.
When you say the capital of hops in the world, is this Would you say that that is a worldwide view, or would you say that that is an American-centric view?
I'd have to see the stats on that, Mike, but I'm pretty sure Yakima is producing more. The thing with Yakima...
Oh, we're talking about amount, or we're talking about...
Everything. We're talking about volume, variety, innovation. It is, I would argue, I'll go on the record and I'll say it's the capital. I could be wrong. I've been proved wrong before, such as Benjamin Franklin and Lagavulin 16, but I prefer to think of us as scientists,
Absolutely.
We learn new things, we change our viewpoint. We change the book, and we say, oh, I was wrong, we move on.
Absolutely.
Going back, we were talking about regions, last two big regions that are coming up these days, France and New Zealand. Those two areas are, we're hearing more and more about hop varieties coming out of those two places. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay, totally different hops.
Yep.
What are we in store for? We went 3 hops, but 3 totally different hops.
Yep. Well, let's talk really quickly about the grains and the malts.
Okay, last but not least, the malt. They both use pale. They both use C80. They both use Munich. The old one also did use Victory. They don't use Victory anymore, but what they do, and this is new to me, I don't really know much about this, they use raw barley. So this is barley that hasn't been malted. It hasn't sat in water and started the germination process. This is raw, from the field, barley that they're throwing into the mix. So, and I'm wondering what effect that has. All right, so which is which here? We've got 4 pints.
You'll be happy to know that I have a system. So what you have in front of you right there is the original. What I have in front of me right here on the right is the original.
Okay. So
what I'm now passing you is on the left is the new, and this is the new. So,
hey, before we go any further, let's talk a second about this glassware.
Let's talk about this glassware.
Where'd you get it?
Okay, so. We had, as you saw in our last episode, we have quite a variety of glassware. One of them broke, and we needed 4. So I ran down to the dry dock, which there will be a future episode on, and we just got the glassware right over at our local brew pub.
Yes, Dry Dock Brewery is Aurora's first craft brewery. Now, what do you think visually, looking at these two?
All right, so this takes a little bit of speculation, but if you look at the old,
yes,
it is a little bit darker.
It is. This is the original. It's an amber ale. It's definitely amber. The one on the left, the new one, it's less amber. I would say this is more of a blonde or gold.
Definitely gold is what came to my mind.
Yeah.
Here.
So I think that answers why they took amber out of the label.
Absolutely, because
we've got a different style. They've switched up the style.
Yeah. The carbonation is good. We poured this at the beginning of the ingredients. You can still see the bubbling happening.
Oh yeah, I'm getting almost equal plumes of carbonation, and the heads are pretty much identical.
Yeah.
So we'll go with the old one. Oh yeah, I'm getting caramel malts, caramel sweetness right off the top. But also there's hops in the background too.
Yeah, there's some citrus. Mm-hmm. No, I get that caramel sweetness.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm getting a little bit of the citrus malty from those old classic Pacific Northwest hops.
And then, new one. Oh, already, I just put my nose towards it and I can smell the difference.
Oh, the caramel is kind of gone. I mean, it's still there, but it's much more subtle.
I think it's gone completely.
I still get it a little bit. It smells like they've watered the malts down, like they've reduced the malts, and the hop profile.
I think it's more pungent. I think it hit me better.
Definitely.
That was the first thing when I put my nose to it. I'm like, hops. There it is.
And they're different, these hops. The combination.
Oh, for sure.
I'm almost getting some fruity floral notes, whereas the old.
So it's more that classic Pacific Northwest. Mm-hmm. You get the citrus.
Yeah.
And the pine.
A little bit of pine.
Yep. And then when I hit the new one. Yeah, floral is the right word. Mm-hmm. All right.
I would say this one definitely smells more malt forward. Like this got more malt, a stronger malt character.
Well, and that's where you're getting that caramel tone from. In fact, let's try it.
All right, let's go with the old. Cheers.
To your health. Interesting. It's interesting because it's the flavor of Fat Tire that I've always known, right? And to be clear with you guys, this will be the very first time that I am trying the new Fat Tire.
And to be fair, this will be my second time. So I have actually tasted these before. Classic Fat Tire taste. It's got a rich flavor. There's definitely caramel in it. There's malty sweetness.
Yeah, and it has a little bit of that bitter aftertaste.
Adjective. I'm getting some standard Belgian yeast notes from this.
Oh, and I think we should probably be getting them from both, right?
Apparently
the yeast should be the same.
Yeah, we should get the same yeast notes from both.
So,
how about the finish on this?
So I mean, when we talk about the finish, I mean, it is hitting the bitter taste buds at the back, right? So I feel it. The mouthfeel, it's fairly effervescent as it goes through. Like this is not warming my entire mouth. This is not lingering. It's clear. It's a quick. But for me, so I can still taste all of that citrus maltiness up here, and then a little bit of bitter at the back of the tongue. And it's an iconic taste in beer.
Oh, for sure.
Now,
yeah. This taste, I mean, the first time I was exposed to this is when I first came to Colorado, I would say late 97, early 98, and this has the same flavor profile. This is Fat Tire.
All right, I'm going to try this newer one.
All right, let's try this. I'm getting some of the same flavor profile as the original, but I'm getting a lighter and, just like they said, brighter kind of mouthfeel, kind of sensation. Like almost a little bit more acidic, possibly.
So remember how I was describing how there was almost like a bitterness finish in the back of my tongue? I don't have that at all with this. In fact, where this is lingering, it's sitting right up near the front and center of my palate. Like obviously I have to swallow it, but I'm not getting anything back here. I'm getting it all center to front of the mouth.
I'm getting a definitely cleaner and drier finish. It's quick, and I'm not getting the sweetness. Like with the original one, there would be some lingering sweetness around the lips and towards the back of the tongue, maybe the front of the tongue, in the mouth somewhere. This one though, I'm getting drier.
Yep, I agree with that. They both still have that kind of, like, when I think of these sort of ales, like on a hot summer day, these are perfect. I want to mention a couple of things when I talk about this coolness factor. The very first thing that I think it's crucial to mention with New Belgium Brewing is, in a way, they are a victim of their own success. And what I mean by that is, before they were this large craft beer producer, if you were to come to a garage and I were to hand you a bottle and we were to have some Fat Tire, you'd be like, oh my gosh, this is a great beer, and its coolness factor would be almost higher because it isn't so light. Because of their success, and I think this has happened to Fat Tire, I think it's happened to Sam Adams, as you get these very successful, very well-crafted beers, and as they get put everywhere, you get this almost elitist looking down on it because of its availability. If we're being honest, they're great beers. They're great beers that got brewed. There's a reason why they got so big. This is a great beer that has been a victim of its own success. So that's the first thing I want to mention with the coolness factor. The second thing that I want to mention with the coolness factor is I think it's important to take into account the wants and desires of up-and-coming generations.
Exactly.
Right? I am a Generation X. I have very strong feelings about things that are nostalgic and connected to me, right? And there's been some pandering of that in pop culture to Generation X because we're hitting that 40s, 50s age. But the up-and-coming generations, what is important to them, they're very much into wellness. They're into what they're doing to their body. They are considering things that we never considered when we were young. But you're seeing a huge boom in the wellness market and in self-care and in setting limits of work and work-life balance in a way that we haven't seen in generations recently. And I think this speaks to that.
Yeah, it does. And one thing I'd like to say in that, you're talking about the current generation is focused on wellness. Do you know what the fastest growing style of beer is right now?
the fastest growing?
Yeah, the most popular, the one that's making the most sales. The biggest increase in sales right now.
I mean, you know what I'm going to say, but I don't know the research. You just know which one that I think it should be.
I don't know.
I just
know the answer.
I think it should be a Kolsch.
No, actually, it's non-alcoholic.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
the fastest growing, and that speaks to what you were saying. And so the question is, why did New Belgium change the recipe? Why did they go with something that was more malt forward, more caramelly?
No, that's
sweet?
what they used to have.
They did. I'm talking about going from. So we've got something that's caramelly. It's bold. It's brassy a little bit from the malt.
Mm-hmm.
Why did they go with this, which is lighter and brighter? Well, the whole thing is they're going for that 21 to 29-year-old market, and they're changing this. Now, here's the thing, and it's a slippery slope. What's the best case scenario for New Belgium? The best case scenario is that this is still going to taste good to the diehard loyal fans that like this, yet it'll attract new fans that didn't like the original.
Absolutely.
So that's what they're looking for. That's their best of both worlds. They'll make something that still has the flavor profile of the old, yet is more in line with the 20-something crowd.
Yeah, and it's those new and generational interests that are really driving, in this case, this particular change, I would think. But it's important not to lose their diehard fans.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, final verdict. Jason, your final verdict.
All right, well, for me, I think this guy, the new one, is lighter, brighter, and better. For me, I like the old, I do, but I think the new one still has those notes, the flavor profile from the old, but it is more refreshing, easier to drink, more of a hot summer afternoon session beer than the old one. And I believe they put a lot of research. I mean, look at the stuff the work they put in the graphic design, which is a lot, and I think they came out with a success there. I think they put even more work into crafting this, and I'm sure it took them several years playing with the recipe to be like, oh, is this because they want to find that optimum. They want to change it, but not enough. I think they did a really good job, and I like the new.
So I'm going to disagree. My final verdict is it's all about the old, and I'm going to tell you why. Personally, for me, there is a substantive quality to me. This is it's not bad. So let me start and agree with you that I think both are not bad. But this old one, that sweeter caramel maltiness is more to my palate,
right,
for sure. And it also has, so when I drink this, I'm getting it the whole journey through the mouth, like I talked about previously. When I drink this, it sticks on the middle and the front palate. It doesn't complete the journey for me.
Right.
So, and maybe it's a product of my age and time. My preference, the old Fat Tire.
I will definitely agree that the original recipe is richer. It's definitely richer in flavor. However, and this is just a thing, and I think it is a generational difference, even though we're the same age.
Not exactly.
Well, we're pretty close.
Stone's throw.
Anyway, what I was going to say is, like the IPA, super popular. We're talking about, what's next beyond the IPA, and we're talking Kolsch.
No, we're not talking about that yet, but we're going to.
We're going to, but a lot of people are talking about it. But currently, IPAs are still the most popular. And this has got slightly more of an IPA, slightly more of a pale ale, because literally, it is paler than this.
It's not just that. This is also very much more hops forward, which is interesting, right? That it dropped to the bittering unit, but you can taste the hops more clearly in the new one than the old one.
That is a good point. And sometimes, I was reading about that last night, they were talking about just because it has a higher IBU doesn't mean it's going to taste hoppier than something with a lower one. It's all about how it plays with the malts.
And the strains.
Yeah, how strong those malts are. Because if the malts are rather subdued, then you can have a 15 IBU.
Which is low.
Wicked low. This is a super low IBU, but I'm definitely I would say, yeah, maybe it has actually gone more hop forward. Whereas this one, I would say more malt forward.
It's malt forward.
It's close to being a balance, but I would say it's more malt forward, whereas this is more hop forward.
Yeah. So there you have it. I prefer the old Fat Tire. Jason's preferring the new one. Please let us know which one you prefer in our comments. Please join us again for our next episode, episode 3, where what are we going to be talking about, Jason?
Boston Beer Company, Sam Adams Boston Lager. For the Barleymen, I'm Jason.
And I'm Michael. And as we always say,
never stop exploring.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we gave me something to do a little more in depth with the editing this time, huh?
Yeah.